Each new coin looked more or less the same as before, but coin for coin contained less silver. The king, meanwhile, could take the surplus silver obtained from the recoinage process and build himself a new palace, or fight a war somewhere. English merchants often suspected that something was wrong, and in many cases decided to put up their prices following a recoinage. What they were selling their goods for was a weight of silver, so if each new coin contained less silver than before, then they'd rightly ask for more coins in payment. By the year 1666 in England, the kings had debased the coinage so much that 240 pennies no longer contained anywhere near £1 in weight of silver. £1 had become the name of the unit of currency, a token of value, no longer a description of its weight in silver. When the first bankers arrived on the scene in the middle of the 17th century, they took the principle of token money to its logical extreme. They produced a piece of paper worth nothing at all and gave it a monetary value. That piece of paper was to make them rich beyond their wildest dreams. The early bankers were often goldsmiths who had safe vaults where they could keep their precious metals and jewellery. Merchants who wanted to keep their gold and silver safe would sometimes come to the goldsmith and ask him to store their money in his vault. The goldsmith would give the merchant a receipt for the coins deposited. Often the receipt would be made payable to the bearer. In other words, the one bearing the receipt back to the goldsmith could reclaim the coins. It didn't have to be the original depositor. Soon a remarkable development took place in English society. Merchants began paying for their goods and services using the goldsmith's paper receipts. There was no point in going to the goldsmith, handing in the receipt, getting the gold coins, and then going to spend them, if a shopkeeper would accept the receipt in payment anyway. This gave the goldsmiths an opportunity to change their business model entirely. Instead of acting as safekeepers of coins in their vaults, they transformed themselves into moneylenders. And when people came to the bank to borrow, what the goldsmith lent them was not gold or silver coinage, but paper receipts, which they printed at no cost in the back of their shops. The goldsmith had acquired the power to create money out of nothing. The more paper money the banker printed, the more he could lend, and the more he lent, the more interest he could earn. It was therefore natural for banks to create and lend as much money as possible. But as they did so, prices throughout the economy began to rise. And if people came to the bank asking for redemption of their paper receipts in gold coins, the bankers knew that they didn't have enough to make good on their promises. As time went by, some people began to argue that if the bank had issued £100 of paper receipts, it should keep £100 of gold coins in the vault as a reserve. But the bankers said that most of their customers didn't ask to redeem their receipts for gold, so for every £100 of paper receipts outstanding, they only needed to keep a small fraction as gold in the vault. This debate mattered vitally. With a fractional reserve of 20%, for example, the bank could take a deposit of £100 in gold coins, issue £100 worth of receipts to the depositor, and then create another £400 worth of receipts for lending to borrowers. A total of £500 of paper money would have been created, but there would only be £100 of gold coins in the bank vault. In 1844, Robert Peel passed the Bank Charter Act with the aim of preventing banks from creating paper money in excess of their gold reserves. However, the banks were one step ahead of the game. As soon as the act was passed, they adopted a new system of money creation, the cheque and account system. Imagine there's just one bank in the economy with two customers who open a new account. They both start with a zero balance on their accounts and the bank issues them with a chequebook. Let's say customer A buys a watch from customer B for £100 and writes a cheque in payment. Customer B deposits the cheque in the bank, and now the bank credits customer B with £100 and debits customer A by the same amount. £100 of new money has appeared out of nothing in B's account, and A is in overdraft by an equal amount. Here we can clearly see that for every unit of money created by the bank, an equal amount of debt comes into existence. Notice also that if A repays the debt by depositing a cheque drawn on customer B, then money is destroyed. This is one reason that modern society simply cannot afford to repay their debt. Debt repayment destroys money and causes economic recession. Have you ever been worried by being in debt?
Yes, a lot of times. Having just graduated university, high levels of student debt. Yeah, very worried.
Have you ever worried about being in debt?
Yes, I have worried about being in debt, often.
How does it worry you?
It worries me because I'm concerned that I can't feed my family, I can't pay my mortgage. It's just the general level of stress.
Have you ever been worried by being in debt?
Yes, I have occasionally. I think there's a nasty feeling of gradually, especially say unemployment or something like this, there's a nasty feeling of money running out finally.
Today it's the government that creates the paper money in our pockets, not the private banks. The banks create money in the form of electronic credits that appear on our bank statements and that we can withdraw using checkbooks or debit cards, for instance.
It is like a kind of hypnotism, it's a kind of confidence trick. And as long as you can actually put a bit of plastic in the wall and paper money will come out and someone will give you something for it, that's fine. But often you find when that system collapses, when there's a meltdown, for example, people can't get the money out of the wall, then the panic spreads very quickly.
Here's a graph showing the extent of bank money creation. The red bit at the bottom is the amount of money created by the state, the grey bit shows the amount created by the banks. Society is paying interest every year on that huge amount of money that's been loaned into existence by the banking system. When Abraham Lincoln wanted to finance the Civil War in America, he decided to print paper money himself. He instructed Secretary of the Treasury, Mr. Chase, to print $400 million of Treasury notes. This Chase duly did, using green ink, hence the term greenback. By this measure, Lincoln saved the American government a huge sum in interest charges. The bankers weren't happy at all. A few years later, during the First World War, the British government decided to do the same thing. They created their own Treasury notes and made them legal tender. Here's one of them. Notice it's issued by the Treasury on behalf of the government, not by the Bank of England. So why did society not demand an end to the creation of money at interest by private companies? One reason is that some businessmen found a way of making money out of the system as it was. They would borrow money from the bank at a rate of interest that was below the rate of profit they could make in their businesses. So, for example, if a businessman borrowed £100 at 5% interest and invested it at 20% profit, he'd pay £5 back to the bank and keep £15 for himself.